we had so much fun. I learned so much about winemaking and the culture there that I just thought, oh, this is the crowd that would love to hear some of the things that we learned. Some of it might be old information to our wine connoisseurs here for sure, but enjoy some of the photographs. So our route in Portugal, we started in Lisbon. This is downtown Lisbon, and we stayed in the Baixa area. It was awesome because we were close to everything, could just walk right out of our hotel and right into Lisbon proper. We then went to Sintra by train, which is about an hour out of Lisbon. This is the Palácio Nacional de Sintra. And that's not really a wine region, so I'm not going to talk about Sintra, but if you're ever in Portugal, go there because it's so interesting. It's known for its castles on the hilltops. It's an ancient place that is a UNESCO World Heritage Site as well, but it's not really known for wine. So I'm not going to talk too much about Sintra. From there, we went to Porto. Here's a little sneak peek because we're going to come back to Porto. Here we are.
Richard, the lock picker? He's a lock picker.
What is he looking at?
Glory
Oh,
hole.
no.
Yeah, exactly.
Glory hole.
Different than that.
Yeah.
And we get the little sneak peek of
Wow.
Porto. As we look at this photograph, there's a bridge on the left-hand side, Pont Louis, and that takes us over to Gaia. And I wanted to point that out now because Gaia is where the port is made. I don't have too many photographs of Gaia by itself, but let's see if that works. Yeah, it does work if I zoom in a little bit. And you can see all the port houses along the Douro River. Calum, we're going to come back to near the end of the presentation. But looking over Porto, oh my goodness, with the beautiful red roofs, the density of population, and the beautiful cathedrals, all lit up by sunset. Okay, and that last one of Porto. From Porto, we went up to the Douro Valley, and this has been someplace that Richard's always wanted to go to. This has been on his bucket list for quite a while because he's loved some of the Douro Reds. So to go to the land where it all began was definitely a dream for him. I kind of tagged along, and this was one of my favorite places to be for sure. Okay, so now I'll slow down a little bit. Now we can start to pour that lovely white. Some of the terms that you're gonna hear me talk about, or what you hear about Portuguese wine. A red wine is a vino tinto. A white wine is a vino branco, and a quinta is a wine farm. So that's why they're all called Quinta do and Quinto das. In Portugal, there are actually 14 wine regions, including Madeira, which you can see off to the lower left, and the Azores, which are not on this map. They're actually closer to North Africa.
Madeira was nice.
Madeira. Have you been to Madeira? Have some Madeira?
Madeira.
Yeah. There's 31 DOCs, Denominação de Origem Controlada, or just controlled areas, and more than 250 grape varieties. Of course, whenever you go to Europe, it's so different than here because there's all these obscure varietals that we don't hear of that are very common, grown all through Portugal. Portugal produced 7.5 million hectoliters in 2023, and most of it coming from the Douro Valley. Lisbon also was second, and there was actually a Lisbon wine, a wine from Lisboa I saw on the share table tonight, so I hope you had a chance to taste that. And they exported 1 billion in 2023, and they are basically the 9th largest of export wine globally. Mine's right here. Thank you. The wines that we're going to taste today are from the Minho and the Douro. Actually, let's go back here because the Minho is up. You can see, oh, if I point to this, you can't see me pointing.
Oh, there you can see.
But there we go. The Minho Verde is the Minho area. Dow is an up-and-coming area too. We did taste quite a few wines from that area. The Douro Valley, yeah, that does work if I move it on my iPad perfectly. We can see the relationship of where things are with Lisbon down low here. Okay. Grapes. Grapes are holy. We got the impression they literally are holy in Portugal. This photograph was taken in Sintra on our way up to the Pina Palace, and we stopped by this beautiful natural spring where a man was washing grapes. It was a Sunday. We asked him what he was doing, and he said, well, we have to bless the grapes in holy water before we pass them out to everybody at church. So we thought that was just so beautiful. He was a lovely person to chat with. Nice, okay, so this is Vino Verde. Does everybody have a glass of the vino? Yep. All right. Let's have I'm gonna have a taste. I'm gonna gently move this. See, because I haven't tasted this one. Okay, known as Portugal's green wine. Does it have a green tint? Good, it does. Okay. This was one of the few wines that I haven't tasted because we didn't drink too much Vino Verde. Whoops, there we go. In Portugal. It's a very light wine, and does it have any carbonation? Are we getting any carbonation?
It's a touch,
It's not necessarily called Vino Verde because of the color. It's because it's bottled very quickly. Portuguese are very excited when the new fermentation is being created, and they want to scoop a little bit off before it's finished fermenting. And they call it Vino Verde. Vino Verdes can be made from red or rosé or red grapes in a red or rosé style, but they're less common because the Minho itself is quite a cool district. This wine that we're drinking now is Luriero. Let me taste it. Okay, so it's a dry style of Vino Verde. Attractively perfumed with an herbal edge. This is from their website. The wine has a touch of spice that highlights the smoky citrus flavor. The wine is crisp and intense and has a long, lingering finish. Are we getting that? Okay. So it's great paired with bread. In Portugal, most of the tasting rooms have bread on the counter served like I've done here. And you just dip it in olive oil and enjoy a snack. So we can pass that through. Just bypass Lori because she doesn't have any extra hands to hold the bread.
Thank you.
Like that. Yeah, and this is sourdough bread that I have to say I made. I make sourdough, and yeah,
Nice.
it's locally grown wheat from Sandishton Farms that I buy the wheat berries and grind them with my KitchenAid grinder and then make the bread. It's a bit like penny when I say something. Yeah. Okay. And this I love is from Wine Folly. This description here. And then others have this. The Minho region, okay, so gooseberry, actually, when I taste that, I was wondering what I was going to get in the wine. So gooseberry to me is coming out fairly strong. Yeah. What other things are you getting?
Light grapefruit, very light.
Like grapefruit?
Yeah.
Okay, any lime blossom? I thought that was an obscure thing, but wondered if we would get that.
Touch lemon.
Touch of lemon?
Touch of
Okay.
lemon.
Citrus notes?
Lime and melon.
Lime, melon? Melon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that too. And
Like a cantaloupe almost, or a honeydew.
as they say, white melon. There you go, which is honeydew.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll just, you know what, I'll just pass, because I keep passing it this way. That would be awesome. There we go. This wine was made by a collective. The brand is, well, it's called Vino Verde Luriero Maria Bonita. And it's made by Lua Chiea, which is a collective group of 8 winemakers and 12 wineries. That's kind of common too for small growers to get together, put their grapes all together and make a product that they can actually export. The Minho faces the Atlantic. this is not the Minnow, but we were at the Atlantic at Sintra one day by bus, and I just thought this kind of captured the idea of what it would be like. It was a really interesting climate because it was blowing like crazy. It was super windy when we were there. You can see the landscape is very dry. There's not a lot growing on it except really tough ocean grass. The temperature was warm and humid. So it would be appropriate for grapes to be growing in that kind of climate. But tough for a red grape. Sardines. This is one of the things. So we're going to pass around some sardines now. This is a typical dish.
Right.
This is deep fried. We're not going to have deep fried sardines. We have canned sardines, which is typical Portuguese food. They love sardines, and all the restaurants serve it. Yep. Or more. It's one of the things that pairs really well with verde and along with a lot of their whites. I took this photograph too because I don't take a lot of photographs of my food, but we've been sitting in this typical Portuguese restaurant that was really comfortable and convivial. It wasn't much bigger than this room. You have to line up outside, like most of them, at 6:30 to get in at 7. It's full at 7 o'clock when it opens. We've been carefully eating our sardines, taking the skin off the skeletons and putting them on the plate, as you can see here. And the owner came along and he picked one up and he just held it over my husband's mouth and said, no, this is how you do it. You drop the whole thing in. You're supposed to eat the bones and everything.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and you know
Same
that?
the Chinese way.
Same Chinese way? Okay. We live and learn.
He did it, he swallowed it.
Oh yeah, after that, we just ate them whole.
Oh,
Well, no, you didn't swallow it whole, you chew them. But you
Yeah.
chew the bones and everything, you don't
Oh,
do the
it's
little
still
picky
soft,
pick
right?
thing like
Yeah.
we were doing, being
Alright.
careful not to eat the skeleton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another favorite thing that's paired with the Vino Verde, and the white wines in general, is bacalao. Has anybody had bacalao? Okay. Yeah, okay, you don't forget it, because bacalao is cod that's been dried, salted and dried, and then rehydrated, and they get rid of a bit of the salt with rehydration. But we're eating dinner at a street side restaurant. This isn't it, but it's one like it. We're kind of chewing on this fish going, hey, it's cod, but it tastes like a rubber tire. What's going on here? Turn on the bacalao. It's got a very chewy texture, not a lot of flavor. We did try it a few times after that first experience, and then just basically tried to avoid it. Depends
who cooks it and how you cook it.
Yeah, that's what we kept hearing, and we tried it a few times.
Was it a red sauce or a white sauce?
Oh, it was both. In both. And I had it the last night as well, thinking, like they said it was fresh cod, but it wasn't. It was bacalao, salted. This is interesting. Lisbon itself is, maybe we don't know it so much for its wine culture, especially here in North America, but it's really known for its culture with music, and there are musicians on every corner just playing to the crowd. At nighttime, of course, the temperatures are warm, so people are out dancing and singing, and musicians they can probably make pretty good livings because they really are literally on every corner. This is Plaza do Camachao, and there's a musician playing at the top of the stairs, just enjoying being an artist in a place where it is respected and you can make a good living at it
So
too.
did Richard's dancing skills improve over there?
He did. He would just dance through all of these narrow streets and up the hills. Yeah, we shook it a couple of times. Do the salsa, you can salsa to just about anything. Here's a few street scenes of Lisbon. It is known as the City of Seven Hills for good reason. Oh yeah, one of the joys of this trip, our daughter and son-in-law, there we go, happened to plan a trip at the same time that we were going, so we made a point of meeting up and going for dinner one night. So there they are, my daughter arriving at our doorstep. Just restaurants everywhere. The food and wine scene in Lisbon is just so different than Victoria. You know, when you have weather that you can be outside in at all times and not worry about a sweater.
So maybe stone
The
Yeah.
stonework,
square.
yeah.
Yeah.
Needs to be good.
One of the things that we did was tram tours. There are trams that run all around the city. You can buy a day ticket that gets you on the tram to go right around the city. And it also includes things like the funiculars that go up the very steep streets. So you can take them up, walk around on a different plateau, go see a different hill, take the funicular back down again, and then just enjoy not having walked 30,000 steps up all day. You can see me. There I am, right there, right there, right there. You see me? That's my self-portrait. Okay. So, in the tram. So, close to Lisbon is the Setúbal region, and I'm saying it like a Canadian does, Setúbal. In Portugal, they say Setúbal. Portuguese sounds a lot like Russian. Lots of sh sounds. One of, I'm gonna let you read this while I chat, but one of the dinners we had in Sintra, the sommelier at the end of the meal brought this beautiful flight of dessert wines, including different ports of all sorts of different colors and vintages, and we were just barely learning about port having all of the different vintages and ranges of colors. And then at the end of the flight was this beautiful, what turned out to be Moscatel do Setúbal. And it is a lovely dessert wine with really strong citrus notes, almond flavors, caramel. We brought a bottle back, and I was really hoping to find a bottle that I could share tonight, but like I could not. There was not one to be found in Victoria through any of the specialty wine places. But you know what?
But you didn't share the way you brought back.
We shared it. Yeah. Ha 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 ha. Anyways, it was fan-friggin-tastic. The I have a no, I don't have the notes on the actual flavor profile.
So is
but
that
I
like a
did describe
dessert
it.
wine then?
It's a dessert wine.
Yeah.
Made from the Moscato.
Great.
So it's got the citrus notes, but lots of orange peel, zest, nuts, and I thought this one specifically had more almonds. And it had a floral nose, which was quite interesting too. So we just couldn't get enough of it too. Alright, so now we can, if everybody's finished their white for the red, while I start talking about wine quality. You know what, you don't have to duck because it faces this way. Oh, unless you're ducking in front of, there we go, so we can cut that out. Portuguese wine quality. As you can see, the big circle are DOC regulated wines. There's more of those than just about anything else. The next part is the Vino Regional, and the Vino Regional, well, I'll go back to the DOCs. One of the restrictions that I thought was so interesting on having a classification as a DOC wine was that they actually had to ask permission to irrigate their vineyards. If they wanted to water their vineyard, they had to get permission from what the winemakers call the wine police and get a written note on watering, when they could water and how much. So it's very tightly regulated.
Italy's the same way.
And Italy's the same way, that's right, I remember that.
They don't even
There's a
have
few other
irrigation
spots.
systems in there.
No, they don't have irrigation systems, they pull out hoses and they do it when they need to, which is like once every couple of years. It's not often, and it's very tightly
Is
regulated.
that because of the lack of water or because they want
No.
the concentration of the grapes?
The latter, the concentration of the grapes, yeah.
So when they irrigate, how do they do it?
Should have had paper
They pull out
towels.
hoses, literally, because most of the vineyards are on very steep terrace hillsides, and they water from the top down and the mid down. But you know what? The winemakers that I would ask that question of would kind of be like, "Don't tell anybody." And I'd say, "Well, how do you water? Do you pull out hoses?" And they go, like they're almost zipping their mouths. And when I asked, "Do you pull out the hoses?" They're like looking at me in the eye. "Don't tell anybody." Right? That's how we do it. Yeah. One of the things about the Vino Original wines too is this gives them a little bit more creative license. Thank you. If a winemaker wanted to make a certain blend, they can choose to not have the DLC labeling on it and just do a regional wine. So some of the regional wines are going to be fantastic wines that we're not going to get here in Canada. And a table wine would be like we have on our table. A little bit more information here that I'm not going to go over for the most part because it just has, there we go, the Commissal, I'm not even going to say it. No, I like to say it. Vitivinicola Regional is the Wine and Vine Commission. They called it the Wine Police, but they did say the CVR acronym a few times. I heard that. Okay.
Richard.
Yeah. He's dancing. He's all dressed up.
Can you pass around the cheese? You really got the cheese. Can you pass the cheese tray around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So like, I love this photograph because the story of Portuguese winemaking starts, they say it goes back to the time of Jesus. There's written material that goes back to the mid-1700s, but winemaking in the country goes back to forever. Yeah, and pass around the cheeses. We can taste it with the reds. We can start sipping that. I'll talk about that in a moment.
You need a knife.
Okay. The Galicians from northern Spain, from Galicians from Galicia, traveled over the mountains from northern Spain into Portugal, into the Douro Valley by donkey. And you can just imagine, like, in the boxes on the side of the donkey were Grandpa's, Nana's favorite grape rootstock that, okay, let's pick a Portuguese name. Paolo was going to plant. So he travels along the mountains through the Douro. He finds a spot, looks up and says, "This is perfect. It is 70 degrees steep. I'm going to make myself a vineyard." This is a more current photograph. There's no rootstock, but I just like the way it looked. The meandering along beside the Atlantic Ocean, finding the next best place to grow grapes. Okay, now we're going to head into the Douro. So our route was from Porto on the coast here, along a very nice highway right up to a small town past Villarreal and Sarosa to Provocende. It's only about, like, it's under 2 hours, an hour and a half drive, and it was a good highway driving. I was actually nervous about going into the Douro because I'd heard, oh my God, it's so windy, the roads are narrow and it's mountainous and da-da-da-da. Well, we spent 30 years in Whistler, so I know what that's like, and it can be just awful. And in Porto, we had the tail end of a hurricane. So the days that it rained in Porto, it was on again, off again for weather. When it rained, it came down in buckets. Like, you got out of that rain or you were soaked. So we happened to have this fantastic stretch of weather during our planned time to get to the Douro, and I was very grateful for that. And we'll just let this, so this is the thing that said the time of Jesus, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And the key to this is a little different Airbnb key, isn't it?
Chastity belt.
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah, there's my husband once again. This is where we stayed in Provocende.
So that really was the key for your
That
Airbnb?
really is the key to our room. Yeah, the doors were huge.
You're not
It's
going to miss
tiny
place,
little
though.
room.
A fashion statement there.
Yeah. In a tiny little town with narrow cobblestone streets and beautiful, well-kept stucco houses and ancient stone walls all along the way, all surrounded by vineyard, churches everywhere. We ended up staying at this place that actually Pat, George, and Lamont Brooks had stayed at. Lamont is going to speak next month. They had stayed there a few years ago, The owner was a wine dealer of Portuguese wines, Belgian by birth. Ronald and Yet is his wife. It was a lovely location. Just only had about 6 rooms, bed and breakfast, but perfect spot to tour the tops of the Douro Valley. This is overlooking their property, and everything, of course, is just surrounded by vineyards. The town itself, no town is complete unless it has a soccer pitch, calcio. And again, I love that it's surrounded by the vineyards. You can just imagine vineyard workers picking during the day or doing what they need to, and then as the sun goes down, the lights come up on the soccer pitch and everybody just enjoys a good game as the weather cools. We were there after harvest, so we could kind of smell fermentation coming from a couple of little spots down in the town. This little truck came by and I knew immediately, oh, that's a picker's truck. There's things going on winemaking wise there. Okay, in the Douro, this is not really an old wall, but I just like the way it showed the construction of some of the schist rock terraces that they would have built when the Galicians first came down. Just hand hewing chunks of rock, taking them by pick and axe out of the earth, putting them behind you, building a wall, making it flat, building a wall, making it flat, building a wall, one after another.
That's when Trump was born.
Yeah, exactly. This is not his walls, this is much prettier. A newer wall. You can see that, of course, there's no mortar, it's just all hand placed. Does anybody know what that's called? Is it just hand
Dry
placed in
stack.
water? Dry stack, there you go. I knew I heard that word during that time. And old walls, this one's much older, as you can see. In the Douro area, they have found artifacts left by the Phoenicians and the Romans. And the written history, like I said, it goes back to 1754. And the wine that we are drinking tonight comes from this winery. This is Quinta das Carvalhas. You can see across the river, the white building. I'll zoom in a little bit. Quinta das Carvalhas. We didn't end up going there because it is one of Portugal's largest wineries, and that's, of course, why we can get it in Canada. But we were interested in a little bit more of the smaller vineyards to go and visit. So we're across the Douro River in a small town called Pinau at Quinta do Bonfim. And I just happened to take this photograph because it's so darn pretty. But you can see their beautiful terraces. So from this site, from Quinta das Carvalhas, they have 5,000 hectares. And they have written references back to 1759 with some remaining vineyards that are over 80 years old. Also, those slopes, some of those slopes are 70 degrees. So you can see the difference. I'm going to point out now in some of the next photographs, some of the hand-hewn older vineyards compared to the newer, more sculpted ones, and we'll see that. But okay, so I'll do that here. See how close the vines are and the spacing between the rows? You can just, you cannot get a machine between those rows. You can just walk. So everything's hand picked, hand tended, and that therefore more expensive. There we go with the newer vineyard right here. These, and I'll zoom in again. The terraces have room for a small truck to go in so machines can harvest and carry whatever they need to. The vineyards also love to have, they have huge signs on the terraces telling you who's growing for what winery. So as you're going along, you're saying, oh, I recognize that. And oh yeah, there's that so-and-so that we just drank at dinner the other night. The wine that we have, okay, so from Wine Spectator, we've had this wine before a few times, Quinta das Carvalhas. This Wine Spectator gave it 92 points, but we found it's one of the better field blends. It's a field blend from the Douro. It is not specific varietals. When they do a field blend, it could be 20 to 50 different grapes going in there. But the description here is it's stylish with silky textured flavors of plum and boysenberry preserves that glide through, flecked with anise and fruitcake notes that meld into the fruit through to the finish. Just love those sometimes. Yeah. Do we get that? The silkiness, I think, is appropriate. Paul?
The boysenberry, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. It is different than a lot of the wines we did taste at tasting rooms. This is a lot smoother. I think it is definitely geared towards our Canadian palate, because when we were in Portugal, we found that a lot of the wines were fairly astringent. They had a lot of structure to them. They had rough tannins. They did not have smooth tannins. They did not have, they had heat rather than fruit. And we were tasting some good reserve wines to a certain level, but there weren't too many that I was jumping up and down to say, oh, let's bring a case of this home.
Do you think that's just because they're making them to age for another decade?
We wondered that.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, I think you'd have to taste a wine that would be 20 years old to find if it had really, if the tannins had softened enough to fit my palate. And it is my palate. I'm gonna buy wine that I like, that I wanna have with food or without food. I do like having a glass before dinner and really tasting the wine rather than just pairing it with food. Portuguese wines, especially the Vino Tintos, are made to go with food. They're not sipping wines. The white wines, the Vino Branco, are the ones that you have with the Vino Verde before dinner. And then port and moscatel afterwards.
Just to your point, I opened up about a month ago, one of the first times I'd opened it up at 2004, Quinto do Noval, and the tannins were still.
Still, yeah. Yeah, your teeth are sticking to your lips, that kind of. Yeah,
Well,
chocolate.
you know, the fruit was still there. I mean, it was really a flavorful wine, but the tannins had still a prominent.
Okay.
And,
Yes, so we wondered that, so if anybody has any more on that as time goes by and you go, oh my god, I found this 40-year-old bottle of Portuguese brandy, it's perfect!
yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to sell her too many things. So the different structures of the vineyards, you can see the old vineyards down below, mixed in with the new ones, and of course many of them have been rebuilt, they do not last 2,000 years.
There's a Hollywood sign again.
Isn't it again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And olive trees tucked in between, which is awesome. Oh, and okay, then the olive oil I'll talk about in a minute. Again, we're above the Douro. You can just see it's just like a wall across the other side of the river looking out.
Million stones.
Yay! There's my handsome husband missing again. But the roads in the Douro were awesome. So we were pretty happy. It is one lane each way, but there are plenty of pullouts so you can stop and take photographs. Because of course, on a day like the days that we had, I want to stop every few minutes and just go, oh my god, look at that, around that corner, that looks fantastic. And this is, of course, the lovely Douro River. The Douro really did become famous partly because of this river. It provided not only water but transportation for the wines to go from where they're grown down to Porto, where they're going to be stored and made into port. We had lunch at this Quinta do Teiro, and I just wanted to point out because the olive oil is from there. So you're having some, if you could dip bread in olive oil, the olive oil is from this place. Maybe that little olive tree. Another one of the spots that we went to was Quinta Santa Eufemia. This, I loved it because it was way the heck up this very, very windy hill. But it was run by two sisters who are about my age. They're the fourth generation of the Carvalho family, and they have a museum up top in the tasting room. We walked into the tasting room, Richard started chatting with the woman who was there about wines, and I started sniffing around and reading all the history of winemaking in Portugal. And they had pictures of her great-great-great-grandfather, or whatever his name was, Bernardo Rodrigues de Carvalho. And everybody is very, of course, proud of how long their family has run that vineyard. So when I started asking questions about it, she said, well, I'm a sister, and my other sister is the winemaker. And so Richard bought this bottle, which was fantastic, and it's empty. I'll go past that. But the other sister came in, and she's the winemaker, and we started chatting, and I said, well, what stage of fermentation are you at? Because I can smell a little bit, but not so much. And she went, oh, because she got that sense, okay, that I make wine, and she said, come with me. Took me into the winemaking room, and we just looked over this beautiful scene of old casks and winemaking facilities. And it's mostly they try to do gravity-fed winemaking process, start something up top, move it to the next floor, and to the next floor. Up top, we rounded a corner, and there were the tanks, and she lifted up the lid of the tank, and we both breathed in the lovely aromas of a fermentation at about 75% completeness. So that was pretty special, and these are their vineyards with, again, olive groves. They have, okay, so from their website, they have 50 hectares of field blends with 20 plus varietals, and they cultivate some varietals that are nearing extinction in Portugal, including Bastardo, Morisco Tinto, Tinta Amarela, Tinta Barroca, and Tinta Carvala. So Carvala and Carvalho, I wondered if there was a relationship there. They just decided, that's our grape, you know, we're gonna name it our grape. And as we're learning, as we're driving back down the road, we see to the right, I look over and my mouth kind of drops because it's all tanks. Those are not small tanks, those are huge
Yeah.
fermentation tanks.
Well, you can see the house for scale there.
Yeah, okay. Oh yeah, there. Well,
No.
there's
Point
the
to
little
it.
house. Yeah, point. That little house,
Yeah.
those are big tanks. All nestled within the vineyard. Thought you guys are the only ones who are going to appreciate those photographs of these middle things. And some of the old vineyards that are more decomposed. You can see some of the old hand-hewn ones on the left-hand side. All these beautiful overlooks that you get. Oh, when we were here, we got out of the car and I started sniffing the air and I'm going, I can smell eucalyptus. So I'm looking around and I can smell eucalyptus. It's strong, it's as strong to me as if I'd walked into a spa. So I'm going, where is the eucalyptus? And then finally behind me there's this big grove of eucalyptus. That is a note that is really dominant in a lot of Portuguese reds. Do we get any of that in here? I can't smell any, I can't really taste it, but there was definitely reds that we had where the eucalyptus from the trees does get into the grape, and it is one of those discernible smells and tastes that you can identify with Portuguese. More terraces, yeah,
That
super
really
steep.
reminds me of Cinque Terre.
Yeah.
It is, only it's bigger, because we've been to Cinque Terre as well, and
Yeah.
it's the steepness, the height of it is much grander.
Yeah.
It's quite jaw-dropping, and you know, the amount of wine that they do produce through this area is, well, as the ninth largest producer globally, you can see it, a lot of it coming from the Douro. It's just everywhere. So there you're getting a bit of scale. You see the river down in the lower left with the mountaintops. It's bigger than the Okanagan in a lot of ways. The following day we wanted to go to Quinta do Crasto, and that was something that had been on, that was Richard's bucket list location, Quinta do Crasto. It's a wine that we had drank in Whistler for years as a Portuguese fave. So we made it. We said we were gonna go to Quinta do Crasto, and our hosts just looked at us and went, "You'll never get in." And we were like, "What? Get in?" So you should make an appointment, of course, if you're going to do a tour or a tasting, but we didn't really plan to go for a tour or a tasting. We just wanted to go, see what it was all about, and buy some wines. So this is the road. This is not a photograph I took, it's a drone photo, but you can see the road in the middle. That's the road that takes you there, and that's the edge of the previous couple of photographs with the sharp rock wall. Has anybody driven this road? No? Okay. And at Quinta do Crasto, come around the corner, it's just on this hilltop here. I'm gonna zoom in, we're gonna see it in a couple of other spots. Oh, there you go, there's their little,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
big sign, little big sign. These are the new vineyards that we're seeing here. So you can see how symmetrical they are, how wide the spacing is, and also the color of the varietals. We're there in October, so the varietals are changing leaves according to their varietal. In the older vineyards, you can see the leaves are multicolored. There's red mixed with green, mixed with chartreuse, mixed with yellow, whereas when they're separated by varietal, you see the color of the leaves changing differently. Quinta do Crasto actually means, what is it, Roman fort. Yep. And it sits on a hilltop like a hat. It's like there's almost a bridge that you have to take to drive to this little point of land where the actual tasting room is on top of it. So we were jumping up and down, and I'm getting all excited when I think about just how excited we were, like kids in a candy shop, what was different once we got there.
Making that,
All the stones.
Yeah.
yeah, and all the terraces.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all the terraces.
It's insane. Yeah, work.
So, the Quinta do Crasto, this is from their website, but I love this photograph, right? They're carrying the grapes in baskets up the road to get for harvest, or I'm hoping that they're full and they're not just empty baskets, that they had a photographer stage this photograph, which could have happened.
Well, a photographer wouldn't do that.
Nothing for publicity. So the Quinta do Crasto is in the family of Lenore and Jorge Roquette for more than a century. And again, they love to state their generational ownership. Their earliest records go back to 1615. And I just think it's really neat to hear how proud people are of having had something like this in the family for generation after generation. It received Victoria status, which is the highest vineyard classification of the time. And what this means is that in between 1758 and 1761, the Marquis of Pombal ordered the installation of 335 granite markers to delineate the first ever demarcated region in the world, the first ever demarcated wine region in the world. So this is one that's outside of Quinta do Crasto. Victoria, you can just imagine them with their Roman gladiator outfits putting this in and then going to drink wine. These are called Marcos Pombalinos. When we got to Quinta do Crasto, we went into the wine room sales room, and the woman asked us, "Hello, do you have an appointment?" And we said, "Oh, no, we don't have an appointment, but we just like to buy some wine and look around." She went, "Oh, I'll be with you in a minute." No problem whatsoever. And then, literally within a minute, she came back. We started chatting with her. Richard told her what he wanted. We wanted to buy some different wines than what we could buy in Canada, so they went off and chatted for a second, and then minutes later, she said, well, we ended up chatting for a few minutes then, and then she said, come with me. Richard and I slowly follow her out. She takes us to this old vineyard and tells us the history, because I start commenting on the foliage, like I just had said. Oh, how come there's some red there and yellow here and yellow there? And then she goes, She said, because this is our Maria Teresa vineyard. This is one of the oldest vineyards, and all the varietals are different. They were planted, who knows, well, basically God knows when. Good way to put it. And we do a special field blend of reserve wine from these old vines. They've had them DNA tested. There were more than 50 varieties in that one field.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. They didn't really care too much about varieties when they planted them. It's just what was going to make a good wine that they liked, and I suppose what was going to grow and survive.
Yeah, one vine died, they just stuck another one in there.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't drive down this? I thought that was really funny. Like, what the heck? How's a car gonna drive down that 70-degree slope anyways? And the Duro beyond.
Beautiful photographs, Lana.
Yeah.
Thank you. These are all iPhone photos too. That's all just iPhone. Some of the varietals the things that we really liked were the TTT blends, the Tinta Roriz, which is also called Tempranillo here, and Touriga Nacional and Touriga Franca. So it's a TTT blend in Portugal is what they call it. But these are some of their top varieties. And just take a look at that little number on the side of that bottle, because we didn't buy that bottle. That's in euros
Wow.
price. Mm-hmm. And that is the reserve bottle from the Vinha Maria Teresa. So the old hand-hewn terraces with the native, well, native, not native, but the old vines.
And what year is that?
They don't care. It's just, it doesn't say on
Looks
there?
like
Yeah,
2015,
See. Oh, there we go. 2019.
2019.
So that's not even really that old. It's just where it's from. The work to grow, maintain, harvest grapes from those old, narrow terraces is just extraordinary. It is extraordinary that they still actually have some of them around. But it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so I'm sure they're mandated in some ways. I don't know for sure, but I'm sure they're mandated to keep them and keep that heritage alive. They did that. The woman, Helena, we ended up spending an hour with her, and she did a private tasting for us. We just had the best experience with them, and we were told, you can't even get in there, no problem. But we just had a great time. So here we see the different colors of
Good.
varietals.
Thick in there.
Very strong. Yeah. And the olive groves. And that's just a swirl
Rebel
of
side.
varietal joy, isn't it?
There.
Another pull out on the way home. Now we should pour the ruby port. So, has everybody got an empty glass?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And we're passing the cheese. We could do some of the other nibblies too. We're kind of doing light pairing with this as
There's a bowl of chocolate over there.
the
That'll be
chocolate will do with the tawny port.
Oh, my bad.
But we did do the cheese? Yep. Did that? Okay. Okay. Well, we're not that far away. We can, yeah. So where we stayed, this is Proxende below the hotel. The last vineyard that we went to was Puente do Como, well, one of the last ones. And it's up the hill from Provesende, up this old beautiful cobblestone road. and it was very local, but the thing that I thought was so cool about this
Look at the little.
this vineyard,
Good
yeah,
stuff,
it's an old
like
house.
Wow.
So vintage.
Yeah, that's older than anything we have here, isn't it?
My gosh.
Yeah,
And it's just got that lean, like a good strong wind, the next storm, it's going to take it down, but no, it'll last another 100 years. Anybody know what those are?
They're
Yeah.
stomping.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're making
Yeah.
it dark and brown.
Exactly. Well, so the red wine, the initial fermentation for it. So I walked in and I went, oh my God, do you guys literally still use humans to stomp grapes? They do. They have the big lagares, as they're called. These were made out of granite. They have cooling mechanisms in them to keep the fermentation from getting too hot. And we can see a little bit closer the construction of it. And this is actually pretty common in Portugal. They love to talk about if they have people stomping grapes, and this is how they do it. They will line people up. The wine tour guide that we had, or the wine, thank you, person that was giving us the tour at Quinta do Como, he described it as you have to have the man in between the ladies, and it's good if they have a balance of the glass of wine and this a hand and not a this a hand. They go for 45 minutes, and I said, okay, is this just like shtick, you know, or is it, why do you do it? And he goes, well, no, the human being warms up the grape, so it gets it to fermentation temperature a little bit faster than if they had not. But I'm still taking that with a grain of salt because it's warm there. It's warmer there in the fall than it is here. Does anybody stomp grapes?
Yes.
I did. We did. Okay, did you do it in the Lagares?
I did it in Italy as a little kid.
Yeah.
They didn't do it that way traditionally, but because I came from Canada, they wanted me to have that experience.
Yes. Okay.
So, yeah, so me and my little friends, the two of us were in there in our little tidy whities. Stomping grapes and stuff, yeah. Purple legs.
Well, it's, I mean, what a cool, fun thing to do. I mean, you could.
We did it in
That
our
way.
past house, so.
Did you do it together? Yeah. When I first got grapes from my dad well before I met you guys, between 2009 or so, I didn't have any winemaking equipment, so that's what we did. I destemmed the grapes and got my husband and daughter, but I had read that, you know, it was better to have women because they were not as heavy as men to crush the grapes. So I asked the guy too, I said, I heard it was only good for women to do this. And he said, no, you have a man in there, it's all good. Fun to have the history. And a little bit of history here. We've got the just wine in casks being transported through the streets of some unnamed Portuguese town. And port bottles. Okay, so port. This is from Wine Folly 2. Thank you to Madeline. Yep. She does great illustrations. I just love them. So they were tasting two different kinds of port. Port is just all the rage in Portugal. That is what they talk about. We don't have a lot of port culture in our own household itself, so it was all fairly new to us. But the differences basically between the two ports that we're tasting today, they are both sweet fortified wines, but the difference is how long and in what type of cask they are aged. Ruby ports are aged less, and they're stored in large tanks to minimize oxygen exposure. So that way they retain their vivid red color and their fresh fruit flavors. And that's just, it's kind of purple here. There we go, that's better this way. It does have a purple-ish tone to it, this one.
It's ruby.
The tawny port that we'll try after this, and we'll just pour them sort of one right after another. It says it evolves into a subtler and more complex wine with a focus on secondary flavors like caramel and nuts. And we have a lot of port makers. How many people have made port here? Yeah, we've got quite a few port makers. So Port only comes from Portugal.
Fortified wine, port style.
Okay, port style, okay. So, voila. And there we go, back to Porto. This is Porto at night, and we can see Gaia on the other side. And a little tour of Porto here. The main strip at night is beautiful. And inside the cities, it's not, a lot of people don't get up really high into Porto, but this is right up on the hilltop, looking into the density of the city itself.
What do I see in the corner there? Starbucks.
Starbucks. Oh yeah, Starbucks. Yeah. It's not. It's everywhere. I'll read to you the description of Sandeman Fine Ruby while we just look at a few of these. It's brilliant red ruby in color with aromas of dried cherries, plums, and strawberries. It has a rich fruit flavors of fresh plums and red fruits with a hint of nuttiness on the finish. Okay, I'm not getting any nuttiness, but I am getting strawberries, dried cherries. What do you think, Port guys? Port guys.
I get some vegetative stuff in there too, like almost like a tomato, tomato leaf.
It's younger, right?
Any nuttiness? I'm not getting any
getting
nuttiness,
nuttiness.
because that's their description, so it's always interesting to find out what you do actually notice versus what they tell you you're supposed to notice.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's really not one grape, and Tawny is a mixture of grapes, mixture of years.
Not from what we've learned, no. It's just they can, and again, because they can be field blends that are made under the Juro, they're harvested, fermented in the Juro, and then transported down the Juro River, well, they used to be transported down the river to Gaia in the springtime. And then they're made into port, they're fortified at that point, fermentation is stopped at whatever point it's at, and it starts the port process. Yeah, so there was no mention so much of varietal. They talk a lot about aging and
And Tawny
oxidation.
has more oxygen,
Yeah,
Tawny is
A lot.
aged in barrels for 20, 40,
yeah.
50
But
years.
the oxygen's more on the Tawny.
Yes.
and you know what, I'm just about to get to that too. That's okay, no, it's a good question, because it's leading me into where we're going, which is Gaia, the land of port. So right in front of us, we're doing a boat tour. This is the Pont Luis Bridge, and it connects Porto to Gaia. Vilanova de Gaia is where all the port houses are. And that's Porto's side, I'm gonna skip over there. Now we're standing on the Gaia side, looking at these boats are basically a floating museum of the way that they used to transport casks of wine down from the Juro.
Let's go to England or.
No, these aren't the ones that go across these are not the ones that, these are the ones that just come down from the Juro Valley, down the big Juro River to Gaia. So they're bringing the wine that's going to be made into port. The Atlantic Ocean is on the other side, and they would take much bigger boats
Did you go on
to
one?
transfer. Not these ones, these are more just the
Not
touristy
those, but
ones.
did you go on the river?
Yeah,
Or-
we were on the river right there.
Right there?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So we did a little bridge tour thing
Yeah?
for 45 minutes. It's lovely.
Lots of drinks on that,
No, just you sitting.
just sitting and
there.
enjoying.
You're sitting there.
There you are,
Yeah.
okay, perfect.
But it was very informative, and you see a little bit of what it is. There's us.
Hey, there you go, okay.
Yeah.
That's not perfect, too many.
Have to throw that in a selfie because we're elated. At this point, we're standing on that bridge that I pointed out, Pont Luis. We've been over at the Porto side, had to duck into a little tourist spot because the rain just dumped itself on us. And now there's a bit of a reprieve, and we want to get across to Gaia to go see a port, to do a port tour and visit Gaia and learn a bit more about port. So we've got this little reprieve. We're really hoping that it's not going to rain as we walk over this massive bridge.
Mhm.
And sure enough, we made it to the other side without getting wet. And that's the view of Portugal from there. We kind of see it from the other one. We got to the other side and the skies opened up, so we ducked into the first courthouse that we could to get a tour, and it turned out to be Calum. So they had space on the next tour that was English speaking, and it was really informative. They teach you all about, again, this is where the tawny, the time in the barrel comes into play. They talk about the difference between ruby port and tawny port and how it's made, and I'm not gonna reiterate that because a lot of you know how that is, but just the actual tour was fairly interesting. Colheita, that word there means just vintage. So that's something that you see branded on all the casks, and it was something that you're wondering what it is. Sometimes it'll have the winemaker's name or acronym, even not really name on it too. And then we can start pouring the tawny if we've got that. Yeah, we can do that because we're just about finished. And then this is Calum, and thank you, Mr. Porter. So at the end, it was about an hour long, and the tour was interesting. It was very informative. The woman talked fairly nonstop, and she kept saying she was so tired and she could hardly wait for it to be over. So, kind of like I'm talking now, but I'm not tired, and I can't wait for this to be over. But by the time we got to like actual port tasting, this is what the way we felt. We were just like so done. We were just like, oh, don't, just let us drink in peace. Don't talk anymore. Mm-hmm. There are, yeah.
Good shot.
And so we had a couple of different
What's
kinds
the
of
lighter
ports.
one?
Again, aging
Yeah?
and vintage. A vintage port is going to have a different color than just a ruby port.
Right. Did you go left to
On
right
board.
here? Because the one on
did.
the far right's
Yeah.
in the middle. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly. So I'll go back to
Yeah.
the lineup that we had. We had a tawny vintage, and that would be a ruby at the end. So the ruby would be the really bright light one. It's much lighter than the one that we're drinking now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are good pours. That's a pretty nice pour that you had there.
Oh yeah, they're great.
Like
And-
they were gracious. That's not like a little sample. It's
No, and all the port houses are very welcoming, and they will happily pour you more if you
a
want.
good shot.
Yeah, and you choose what kind of pour you want. If you want to do vintage port, if you want to do just rubies or just tawnies. Yeah, there we go. So when we came out of the port tour, we were wrecked. We were tired and had port, and it was sunny though, so we were super happy to see the sunshine again. But we knew that it was going to pour rain again the next day, so we had this in mind. And I was so excited by this, and I thought that you guys would be too.
Love Tawny stuff.
Tawny, better? Yeah.
Oh, Karen.
Yes.
The last thing I'm going to talk about is the World of Wine Museum in Porto. So as winemakers, it has 5 different museums. You could spend days there. You could spend half a day in one of the museums. We spent half a day at the wine experience in the World of Wine Museum. It's interactive, and it feeds you through a pathway of all sorts of different types of displays. This shows like the soil structure of the Douro, the Dow, and the different POCs of Portugal. Shows the schist, shows the way the soil is layered and what kinds of grapes grow there, leaf structure. So just as wine nerds, to put it nicely, you probably all would love this museum.
I just pulled up some grapes from the yard, and that's informative to me. That just shows you.
Yeah, how
down-
deep they go.
yeah.
And it'll tell you how deep the grapevines go and all the rest. And it has fun things like, this is an illustration of what it would be like to be the Grenache grape. So it describes the grape and its taste and how vibrant it would be and where it's grown and who its companions are and that sort of thing. It also has these little rooms that are actually, each of those is a DOC, so it's got history of the culture of, for instance, the Dow area or Lisboa, and who came there and who traveled through and what kind of wines that they make now. And then the Cork Museum, it's all the history of Cork. And the Cork forest and trees that everything you can touch. There's furniture made out of cork, clothing made out of cork, glasses, all sorts of things made out of cork.
Incredible.
And it was after, of course, you've experienced the wine museum, you just have to find a nice little street side cafe and grab the rest of your tawny port and enjoy a Portuguese dinner. And hopefully it's not bacalhau cod. The end.
Oh, thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. Excellent.